So we're going to work on the Magic of Christmas project recipe. And yeah, it's different than what we've seen before. I don't think we've seen one yet that we have this big Christmas tree off to the side there. I like it. I think it works really well with Christmas because sometimes we have like maybe a bigger photo that we want to highlight. So I think it looks really nice next to just one photo there. However, if the tree is not your thing, I think it could easily be replaced with just another photo there and then maybe bring in some of those other elements around the photo instead. So I think there's definitely options. And I think it's going to be pretty easy once we look at how we're going to break it down. So let's go ahead and do that. So yeah, they do use the new ornament punch. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to be punching that out, and is we're going to trim them down to fit into the tree. That's with the green. They brought in cardstock for that. And then we have a strip here. We're going to come back and talk about that strip. And then we have a couple other pattern papers. We're bringing in the sprigs is the next piece. And here they're using it for one of those is a strip across the right-hand page, and then the other two are for photo mats. We come down here to the paper number 3, which is the holly and the berries. I like that one. And that's going to be down here across the bottom to that. And then the little pieces are in the tree. So if you look at the cutting guide, excuse me, I have a bunch of notes written on here. But if you look at the cutting guide, we have these two long strips or wider strips here, which are 1.5 inches. Those will be at the bottom. And then we have some other little strips, and those over here, that's how we're going to make the tree. Then they have one thin strip, a 1/2 inch strip, which comes on the right-hand side. Then we come to designer paper number 3, which is paper number 4 in the whole thing. This is where I kind of had a little bit of a hiccup. I don't think I even pulled it, to be honest, because I'm not going to use it. This is a great design for scraps. And I don't know, I don't want to cut into a whole piece just to use it for the scraps over here. If I had other scraps in the collection, I probably would have incorporated those right in, but I decided to go into other collections and see what I had left that might work. I have this one that's just ornaments. Pretty much, I feel like any Christmas collection might work for your scraps. And then for the trunk, I'm going to, oops, that's right, I have 3. I had this one too, because we don't need a whole lot. And for the trunk, I'm just bringing in some hot fudge. But I'm going to do a little treatment to this to show you guys how I'm going. Because here I feel like a little bit of like a reddish brown, and it has those diagonal stripes. And I think that brings texture into the layout. So I wanted to replace the idea of texture. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that with my cardstock. When we come to paper number 4, I'm going to bring in scraps, but you can most certainly cut into your full-size sheet if that's all you have. As far as the background, they used white, which I do have white here, but I also brought in Stardust, the one that has the little flakes on it, the little specks. And I thought I'm going to see if I like it on this because it's going to add a little something to my background. I feel like we're going to have a lot of open space here. We're going to start with the solid green, dark green cardstock. And we're going to do some punching. I'm just going to punch 2 rows out. Okay, let's look at the fallout. So it has the little ornament pieces. If you really wanted to come back in and decorate your, punch it twice on different colors and then come back in and use those little pieces, you can fill in all the little ornament pieces with the fallout, and that would look super, super cute. But the one I really like is the little like starburst that pops out of the center of one of them. So I am going to save those aside because I might want to sprinkle those back in as a little finishing touch somewhere. Never know. Okay, so I need one more. But with our green piece, we need to cut off a 3.5 by 12-inch piece. Okay, paper number 2, which is our sprigs. Here we need a 4.5 by 12-inch strip. And then these 2 are for photo mats, basically 2 strips that are 4.5. This will be used for my photo mats, but I'm going to hold off on cutting them down because my photos are a little smaller tonight. I'm going to trim it later, but if you wanted to cut it, you just cut it right in half and that'll give you 2 photo mats. And then this piece is scrap paper number 3. It's bows on the other side, which are directional, but I don't think it really matters. Let's look at where we're using this. We're using it here and in our tree. Okay, and then the holly part we're using down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to turn my bows. I really don't think we're going to see enough of it to make a difference. So we're going to trim off a little piece, and it's going to be a 1/2 inch by 12 inches. Oh, you can kind of see little bows. I'm going to just flip it over for our own sake. And we need 2 strips that are 1.5 by 12 inches with this holly side. Now we're going to get to those smaller cuts. They're actually only 1/2 inch cuts. We're going to cut 2 strips at a 1/2 inch. And then the rest of all that is scrap for another layout. 6.5 inch. I'm just going to go straight down the list so we don't miss any of them. So on that first piece, we need a 6.5 inch. I'm going to put them in order up here too. Maybe that'll help. And then we need a 4-inch piece. And then here we just need a 1/2 inch. And this little piece we're going to keep, but this little piece we are not. And then with the second strip, we only need to cut one thing, and that's at 2.5 inches. This is why it's so great if we had scraps to use, because we're just using such a small amount. And then that's scrap too. Now we're on to paper number 4, which is the one we're only going to cut scraps off of. Basically, what you want to do is to cut 2 strips again that are 1/2 inch, and then we're going to look at our measurements that we need. They're just going to be a slight different size than what we had with the red because it's going to stagger to make the tree. So I have my 2 strips, a 6-inch piece. And then the next one, it looks like it's going to be 4 3/4. And then that little piece is trash. And then on this long piece, we only need 2 inches. This rest is scrap. Now, if you're using that same piece that they recommended here, then you want to come in and cut a 1 3/4 inch square or use your square punch. So I'm going to bring in the hot fudge and my square punch and punch out 1. And that's the cutting. Okay, so we're going to start with our 2 strips that are 1.5 by 12 inches. That's easy. We're going to bring it right down here to the bottom on both sides. Then if you're following along and using the same thing, you would want to bring in these peppermint stick border stickers. And it's going to go right on top of the seam here to help that transition. Now I'm going to hold off on mine for a minute. My concern was this. I'm going to take it and then I feel like I want something else there besides just the peppermint stick. Super cute. Now that I'm looking at it on my Stardust paper too, I like it a lot. Because what I'm thinking is I'm going to bring that green back in and I'm going to cut with my trimmer blades a little decorative piece. Only twist because, I don't know, reminds me of a candy cane. But I'm going to do a 1/2 inch cut. This is the idea. Put it on here. So there's a little bit of green at the top and the bottom. And then do something like that. Okay, then the next thing we want to do, we're going to come back to the tree. Let's look at the right-hand side. That's where the 3.5 by 12-inch piece comes in. They're running it, it looks like, from top to bottom over the border area down here. And then they take the 4.5-inch by 12-inch and they are making this kind of L, upside down L shape here. And they're coming down, it looks like about a 1/2 inch. Then this piece like that, right under there with a little bit of a gap, and then a photo mat here. Work on the tree. Our tree, we need to trim them down a bit. So I have this one ornament that is not a full, complete ornament. I think we have extra, so I'm going to round mine off a little bit. Okay, and the first one we need is 7 1/4, and then this piece, 2 inches. On this one, I need 5.5 and 3.5. And basically, we're going to start with the biggest one and get to that little tiny piece, centering it for now. I'm not adhering anything. I'm going to dry fit everything first. And I have all my strips here still in their rows that I cut them. And I'm just going to go in size order. So I'll start with my longest piece of my border and then this piece. And it looks like, I mean, you can really just play around with the reason we made all those little cuts is so that we can now stagger them here. And you can play as much as you want with how much spacing you want between it and then come back in and tuck where you need to, or how much, how much of my ornaments do I want touching that red paper? It looks like they have very little, but maybe you want more. And then we bring in the third piece and you can, same thing, overlap it as much as you want. And then we're just going to repeat. And we're just going to keep going the next size, smaller, 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 till we get to the top. And I might have to slide everything over because I still want to get a photo here. And then there's room up here for a star. I'm going to scoop mine, I think. There's the tree. Yes, I wanted to bring that little bit of texture back in we were talking about. And so I'm going to grab my die cut machine, an embossing folder, and I'm going to put my paper through here. And I thought I had one that had stripes on it, but I could not find it. But I found this one that has little dots on it, and I'm going to run it through my embossing folder and see if I like it. Okay, so you see it just added a little bit of texture to my trunk. And then I'm going to tuck it under here. That's the layout without photos. Bring in some photos and figure out my photo match. Okay, so my photos I'm going to do today are old photos from 1970. I feel like this was a good paper pack for it because it kind of has a little bit of a vintage feel, especially with some of the stickers. I have way more pictures than I have room for, so I have to make some decisions here. And so this one's going to kind of go something like this. Yeah, I might have room over here. Maybe I'll move this one down over here. Oh, we had our embellishments there, but I can maybe move something to the other side. I think it's worth doing that to get my other photo on here. That way I can add actually the three of us and then my brothers. And then what do we have here? Oh, we have more room down here. Wait a minute. I might get them all on here. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it somehow, get both these photos on here. And then the journaling is going to come right over here. They used some write-on strips. I think that's a great idea. If you had a journaling card, that would be a great place to, you can bring one in. We have plenty of room there. You can even, if you had more photos, a photo would fit there pretty nicely. Well, there's my photo placement. It's pretty similar. Snuck in a couple extra photos of myself. They put the magic of Christmas. That's cute. They put that right here in the center of the tree. I like that idea. So why not? I am going to pop that up onto some foam though, so it stands out. I did like the reindeer and the sleigh. How am I going to get all that on here? Let's see here. It's going the wrong direction is the problem. However, it fits. I think that's cute. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to move it, shift it over here. On this side, they had the two little candy canes. I could save those for another layout. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to put anything else over here on this page. I'm going to keep it pretty plain and just have my little title there because I think the tree is our decoration, right? And we did a little special cut down there. So I think I'm okay. I'm happy with that page. I don't think I have a lot to say, although I should actually hold off and decide. I know there's other photos of who gave us this jungle gym thing, so I could write that, and then I do want to find out about the dress and the slippers before I commit to how much journaling I need. I did bring in my write-on strips to use there. I just don't know how many I'm going to need. So I'm going to hold off on my journaling, but it is going to go there. In fact, I have little placeholders. I'm going to have mine look something like that. I have my little my little asterisks. Let's figure out if we're going to use those because I might. I think over here, do a couple. I also think over here, maybe. I kind of like it. I'm going to add those. Oh, I'll probably throw the year on here too. Let me grab my little stickers for that. There we go. I had it up a little bit higher on the sleigh, but you couldn't see it all. So I'm going to keep it. I'm going to call it at that. And I like it.